The darkness was heavy, smelling of wet paper and stale trash. 5-year-old Sharon pulled her knees up to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible inside the cardboard box. The cold Chicago wind sliced through the cracks in the flaps, biting at her exposed skin, but she didn't dare make a sound. She squeezed her teddy bear, Mr. Paws, so tight that her knuckles turned white. "Stay here, and don't make a peep," the bad lady had whispered. Her voice had been sharp, like broken glass. "If you make a sound, the monsters will come." Sharon squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking out and freezing on her cheeks. She was hungry, and her fancy blue dress was damp from the bottom of the box. Outside, the city roared, sirens wailing in the distance, heavy tires splashing through puddles, the hum of scary machinery. Every noise made her heart hammer against her ribs like a trapped bird. She wanted her daddy. She wanted his warm hugs and the smell of his expensive cologne. But Daddy wasn't here. Only the cold, the dark, and the terrifying promise that she had been thrown away like garbage. A few yards away, the heavy metal door of Gino's diner creaked open, spilling a rectangle of yellow light into the grim alleyway. Amelia stepped out, shivering immediately as the icy wind hit her face. She pulled her thin, worn-out coat tighter over her waitress uniform, but it did little to stop the chill. She let the heavy door slam shut behind her and leaned against the brick wall, letting out a long, exhausted sigh that appeared as a cloud of white steam. Her feet throbbed in her cheap, non-slip shoes. It had been a double shift, 14 hours on her feet, and her back felt like it was snapping in two. With trembling hands, Amelia reached into her pocket and pulled out a wad of crumpled $1 bills. She counted them slowly. 1, 2, 3, 38. $40. $40, she whispered to the empty alley. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Rent for her studio apartment was 2 weeks overdue, and the landlord, Mr. Henderson, had already threatened to change the locks. She had an empty fridge, a car that barely started, and a mountain of debt left behind by her ex-husband. She looked up at the towering luxury apartments across the street, their windows glowing with golden warmth. Up there, people were drinking wine and sleeping in silk sheets. Down here, Amelia was calculating if she could afford gas to get home. She pushed off the wall and trudged toward her car, a rusted gray sedan parked near the dumpsters. As she fumbled for her keys, a strange sound stopped her dead in her tracks. Scratch, scratch. It came from a large moving box sitting alone near a puddle. Amelia froze. It was probably a rat. The alleyways were full of them. She gripped her keys between her fingers like a weapon, ready to run to her car door. Hiccup. Amelia's eyes went wide. That wasn't a rat. That was a human sound. Her heart began to race. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer to the box. The flaps were taped loosely shut. "Hello," she called out softly. "Is someone in there?" The box shook violently. Amelia didn't think. She just acted. She dropped to her knees on the wet pavement and tore the tape open. She threw the flaps back. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Inside, looking up at her with terrified, giant blue eyes, was a little girl with curly blonde hair, clutching a teddy bear. The child was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "Oh my God," Amelia whispered, heartbreak instantly replacing her fear. "You poor thing." Suddenly, the roar of an engine echoed off the alley walls. Amelia looked up. At the end of the alley, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows turned the corner aggressively, its high-beam headlights blinding her. The car didn't look like police. It looked predatory. It was moving slow, prowling. The little girl let out a strangled scream of pure terror. "Bad lady," she shrieked. Amelia's instinct screamed at her danger. She didn't ask questions. She scooped the child out of the box, wrapping her arms around the shivering body. "I got you," Amelia hissed. The SUV engine revved, the tires screeching as the driver spotted them. The car surged forward. Amelia threw open the back door of her rusty sedan and shoved the girl onto the seat. "Get down," she yelled. She slammed the door, jumped into the driver's seat, and twisted the key. "Please start. Please start." The engine sputtered, choked, and then roared to life with a loud bang. Amelia stomped on the gas pedal, just as the black SUV skidded to a halt exactly where the cardboard box had been. She didn't look back. She peeled out of the alley onto the main road, her heart pounding in her throat, tires spinning on the wet asphalt as she merged into traffic, escaping into the night. Amelia drove like a criminal, swerving through the dark streets, running red lights she barely even saw. Every time she glanced in the rearview mirror, she expected to see the cold, massive grille of the black SUV, filling her view. Her hands were rigid on the steering wheel, knuckles aching from the tension, and the only sound louder than the sputtering of her engine was the frantic thumping of her own pulse. In the back seat, Sharon wasn't crying, which was somehow more terrifying. The little girl was curled into a ball, clutching Mr. Paws, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her eyes were wide, fixed straight ahead, staring at something Amelia couldn't see. A silent scream of pure, paralyzing trauma. Amelia tried to speak, tried to offer a comforting word, but nothing came out. She was shaking too violently. She knew she had made a dangerous, possibly illegal choice, but leaving that child for the people in that car was not an option. After a tense 20 minutes, Amelia finally pulled up to her building, a depressing brick cube on the wrong side of the city. She cut the engine and waited, listening to the silence. No roaring engine, no headlights, just the distant traffic and the howling wind. It felt safe for now. Amelia led Sharon up 2 flights of creaking stairs to her studio apartment, a single room that felt cold even when the heat was blasting. It was tiny, cluttered, and threadbare, but it was a haven. She locked the deadbolt and flipped the chain, a small ritual that always made her feel marginally safer. She knelt before the child, who still hadn't spoken, and peeled off the girl's damp, expensive blue dress. Underneath, Sharon was wearing clothes that Amelia knew cost more than her entire month's rent. She wrapped Sharon in her thickest, warmest, but most faded blanket. "We're safe now," Amelia murmured, her voice soft. "It's just me and you." Amelia found a can of chicken noodle soup in her pantry. It was her last one. She heated it on the stove and poured it into a chip bowl, setting it on the tiny, mismatched kitchen table. She sat opposite Sharon, watching as the girl slowly, warily, lifted the spoon to her mouth. "My name is Amelia," she said, trying to keep her voice light and steady. "Do you have a name, sweetie?" Sharon looked at her with huge, unnerving blue eyes, but gave no response. Amelia didn't push. She just ate her half of the soup and pointed to the small, lumpy sofa that served as her bed. After a few minutes of quiet warmth, the fear in Sharon's eyes finally gave way to exhaustion. She drifted off quickly, Mr. Paws tucked firmly under her chin, her small hand reaching out and grasping Amelia's index finger. It was a connection, a plea, and Amelia held onto it tightly, forgetting her own exhaustion. The next morning, the sun was barely up, but Amelia was already awake, frozen by a sound that always meant trouble, a heavy, rhythmic pounding on her apartment door. "Amelia! Amelia, open up. I know you're in there." It was Mr. Henderson, the landlord. His voice was a gravelly rumble of anger. Amelia gently slid her hand away from Sharon's and stood up. She quickly checked the deadbolt and adjusted the chain. "Just a moment, Mr. Henderson," she called out, already knowing this argument was lost. She opened the door just enough to slide her body into the crack, blocking his view of the apartment. 2 weeks, Amelia." Henderson snarled, his face red. "I want the rent, or you're out by noon. I'm tired of excuses." Amelia began to plead, her voice tight with panic. "Please, just until Friday. I'll get an extra shift, I promise. I just need a couple." "No more promises." "Noon." Henderson slammed his fist against the door frame, making Amelia jump. As she watched the furious man stomp away, defeated, Amelia took a shuddering breath. She turned back into the tiny room, the weight of her impossible situation crushing her. That's when she saw Sharon. The little girl was no longer on the couch. She was standing by the overflowing trash can, her little brow furrowed in concentration. In her hand, she held a discarded copy of the Chicago Tribune that Amelia had tossed after her shift. Sharon held the paper up, her eyes flicking between Amelia and the front page. Amelia walked over, ready to take the newspaper away, but froze when she saw the headline. "Grief-stricken tech titan Harris Evans honors tragically deceased daughter." Beneath the headline was a large, glossy photo of a handsome, somber man, Harris Evans, and beside him, a portrait of a smiling, 5-year-old girl with bright blonde curls. It was Sharon. The newspaper dropped from Amelia's suddenly nerveless fingers, the pages fluttering down to the threadbare carpet. Her mind refused to process the image. The beautiful, smiling girl on the front page, declared deceased, was the terrified child standing beside her. Amelia reached out and grabbed the paper, smoothing out the crumpled surface to confirm the chilling details. The article stated that 5-year-old Sharon Evans, daughter of tech billionaire Harris Evans, had tragically perished in a sudden boating accident off the coast of Maine 2 weeks prior. A memorial service had been held just days ago, attended by hundreds of high-profile figures. It was a complete, calculated lie. Sharon was not only alive, but she was standing in Amelia's dingy studio apartment, staring at her own obituary. A cold wave of realization washed over Amelia, far colder than the Chicago air. This wasn't a case of a lost child. It was a conspiracy, a ruthless cover-up engineered by someone who stood to gain from Sharon's death. And by saving Sharon, Amelia had inadvertently placed herself at the center of a very dangerous, very wealthy plot. She was harboring a dead billionaire heiress, and if she was caught, the charge wouldn't be aiding a runaway. It would be high-stakes kidnapping. The urgency was immediate. Amelia picked up the phone and called the diner, her voice trembling as she lied about a sudden illness. She couldn't risk leaving Sharon alone, and she certainly couldn't take her to a public place. She was already on thin ice with Mr. Henderson. Losing this shift meant imminent eviction, but survival came first. "We need a disguise," Amelia murmured, running a hand through her hair. She found a pair of blunt kitchen scissors and a cheap baseball cap she used for bad hair days. With careful, nervous snips, she gave Sharon a choppy, boyish haircut, tucking the remaining curls under the cap. The child remained silent throughout the process, watching Amelia with unnerving stillness, but she didn't resist. Amelia dressed her in the only hand-me-down clothes she owned that were small enough, a faded pair of jeans and a bulky sweater, completely hiding the expensive fabrics the girl had been found in. With the physical transformation complete, Amelia sat on the couch beside the child. "I know your name is Sharon, sweetie," she said gently, holding the little girl's hands. "And you have a daddy who misses you very much. I need to take you back to him. Can you tell me what happened? Who is the bad lady?" Sharon's huge blue eyes welled up again, but this time, a word finally broke through the traumatic silence. Her voice was thin, a reedy whisper of pain. "Vanessa," Sharon breathed, the name tight and fearful. "Vanessa hurt me. She said Daddy won't love me anymore." Vanessa, the stepmother. Amelia remembered the flattering photo next to Harris Evans in the article. Vanessa, beautiful, poised, and now revealed as a monster. The realization solidified Amelia's conviction. She had to get Sharon to her father, and she had to do it without alerting the conspiracy. She made a decision. She would not call the police. She had seen the black SUV, and she knew rich, powerful people could corrupt the local authorities. She had to bypass the security layers and reach Harris Evans directly. But how? She needed a starting point, and the police station was the only place she could safely deposit Sharon if things went wrong. Heart pounding, Amelia grabbed the girl, secured the baseball cap, and slipped out the door. They walked briskly through the cold morning toward the nearest precinct, Amelia keeping her face down and her coat collar pulled high. They were less than a block away, Amelia's pace quickening with relief, when she saw it. The familiar, menacing silhouette of the black SUV, parked casually near the entrance of the precinct. Amelia's blood ran cold. Then the driver's door opened. A large, impeccably dressed man in a dark suit, the very image of a private security operative, stepped out. He smoothed his jacket, adjusted his tie, and then walked confidently up the steps, where he was immediately greeted by the precinct chief, who clapped him on the shoulder, laughing easily. The man was not an officer. He was the head of Harris Evans's private security detail, the man who had been hunting them. The police station wasn't a refuge. It was an extension of the trap. Amelia froze, fear overriding every rational thought, and pulled Sharon violently back into the shadow of a boarded-up storefront. Amelia's mind went blank with terror, but her body reacted on raw adrenaline. She didn't hesitate for a second. Yanking Sharon's small hand, she pivoted, not toward the street, but deep into the labyrinth of downtown side streets. She forced herself into a rapid, desperate jog, pulling Sharon behind her, weaving through the morning rush hour crowds like a piece of debris in a flood. "Hurry, sweetie. Just keep running," Amelia gasped, her breath burning in her chest. She didn't dare look back, but the vision of the security chief and the police chief laughing together was burned into her memory. The realization was sickening. She was right. They were being hunted by powerful people who had bought silence and compliance. The system she had hoped would save them was, in fact, closing the trap. Every authority figure, every uniform, every official channel was compromised. Their only defense was invisibility. She ducked into the first place that offered anonymity and shelter, the grand, echoing foyer of the city's main public library. The sheer number of people reading, working, and milling about provided immediate cover. Amelia found a remote corner in the periodicals section, settling Sharon onto a beanbag chair behind a tall shelf of maps. "Stay here, quiet as a mouse," Amelia instructed, removing Sharon's hat and petting her hair. "We need a plan." Amelia spotted a bank of public computers. Her hands were shaking as she logged on, her search history instantly filling with the name, Harris Evans. The results confirmed the devastating portrait painted by the newspaper. The tech CEO was shattered by the loss of his daughter. The articles described him as withdrawn, canceling major investment deals, and accelerating his retirement from the billion-dollar tech company he had built from scratch. A pit formed in Amelia's stomach. The man was too heartbroken to suspect foul play. He had bought the lie. She then searched for Vanessa's name. The picture quickly became clear. Vanessa was Harris's new wife, not Sharon's mother, and the articles noted that she was the primary beneficiary of a large trust fund, which would fully vest upon Harris's retirement, especially given the unfortunate circumstance of Sharon's death. It was the oldest story in the world: greed, betrayal, and murder disguised as tragedy. Vanessa had everything to gain from silencing the small girl hiding in a library. Amelia leaned back in the plastic chair, the cold terror giving way to a fierce, protective resolve. She was Sharon's only bridge to the truth. She scrolled further, digging through corporate filings and old charity donation lists, searching for any route to Harris that bypassed the layers of security Vanessa had surely installed. She finally found a dusty webpage for a small, private foundation Harris ran, a charity for retired military vets. At the bottom, under a tiny, easy-to-miss link, was a direct administrative line to his personal office, probably meant for high-level donors. With a deep, shaky breath, Amelia pulled out her old cell phone. She walked to the most remote corner of the library, whispering the number into the phone. A curt, robotic voice answered. Harris Evans's personal office. I have information regarding his daughter, Sharon Evans. Amelia rushed out, trying to keep her voice low and steady. She's alive. I need to speak to him. Tell him she has Mr. Pause. The operator paused for only a fraction of a second. Thank you for the tip, the voice said, suddenly sounding less robotic and colder. I will pass this along. And then the line went dead. Amelia hung up, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Had she done the right thing? Had that message reached Harris? Or just his wife's security net? 5 minutes later, the lights in the grand reading room flickered violently. A deafening, mechanical shriek tore through the silence as the fire alarm began to wail, flashing brilliant red light everywhere. Panic erupted among the patrons. Amelia spotted them instantly. 2 large men in identical dark suits and sunglasses, moving with cold, professional precision, blocking the main exit doors. Their eyes were methodically scanning the room for a woman in a heavy coat and a small, blonde child in a baseball cap. The trace was complete. They had found them. The screech of the fire alarm was their cover, but also their ticking clock. As patrons scrambled, confused and rushing toward the main exits, Amelia grabbed Sharon, pulling her close. The 2 men in suits were systematically clearing paths, their eyes narrowed. Amelia knew she only had seconds before they reached her secluded corner. Thinking fast, Amelia scanned the tall, heavy bookcases surrounding them. She pushed Sharon down behind the desk, and then used every ounce of her waitressing strength to wrench the heavy, wooden shelving unit that held the biographies. It went with a terrifying, splintering crash, sending hundreds of volumes raining down and creating a cloud of dust and paper. The noise and chaos momentarily stalled the guards. Now, Amelia hissed. They bolted, not toward the front, but toward a narrow, unmarked door Amelia had spotted earlier, a fire exit. They burst out onto the chaotic city sidewalk, the alarm still screaming behind them. Amelia flagged the city bus immediately, shoving a handful of crumpled dollars at the driver without waiting for change. The ride was agonizingly slow, carrying them across town toward the opulent, glass and steel canyons of the wealthy district. Amelia held Sharon tightly, the child's fear a heavy, cold weight against her chest. She pointed out the window at the towering buildings. That's where your daddy works, Sharon, she explained, her voice firm. We're going to take you home now, but we have to be smart. Amelia knew she couldn't just walk into Olympus Tower, the massive skyscraper that housed Harris Evans's offices and his personal penthouse. She needed a way to penetrate the layers of security installed by Vanessa and her chief guard. As they approached the tower, Amelia spotted a fleet of catering vans lined up outside the service entrance. Tonight was the memorial dinner that had been mentioned in the newspaper, the dinner mourning Sharon's death. Amelia hatched a desperate plan. She changed their clothes in the cramped bus bathroom. She discarded her heavy coat and pulled out her old, slightly stained black waitress uniform, folding it neatly in her bag. She wrapped Sharon tightly in the blanket again, tucking the girl and Mr. Paws into a deep, wheeled laundry hamper she had spotted by a dumpster near the service entrance. She put on her most professional, tired expression, the same one she used every night serving impossible customers, and pushed the hamper toward the tower service entrance. Catering, Amelia announced clearly to the grumpy security guard at the service loading dock, nodding toward the hamper. Linens for the penthouse suite. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Every step, every nod from the guard, every ding of the service elevator was an extreme risk. Inside the hamper, Sharon remained miraculously silent, clutching the teddy bear and understanding the stakes instinctively. The elevator climbed, the silence broken only by the low rumble of the machinery. Amelia tried to control the desperate tremor in her hands, focusing only on the number of the floor rising steadily toward the top. Finally, the elevator dinged, announcing their arrival at the exclusive penthouse floor. Amelia wheeled the laundry hamper out, turning right toward the main reception area, her eyes searching for any sign of Harris Evans. She took one step, and then she stopped dead. Standing directly in front of her, dressed in a sleek, black designer gown, beautiful and cold as polished ice, was Vanessa, the stepmother. Vanessa had been speaking to an assistant but paused, her eyes narrowing as they swept over Amelia's nervous face and the strangely large laundry hamper. Then, her gaze dropped to the small, blonde head peeking momentarily from the blanket folds inside the cart. Vanessa's eyes widened, her painted smile instantly twisting into a mask of pure, vicious rage. She took a sharp breath, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Amelia. "Security!" Vanessa shrieked, her voice echoing in the marble hall. "Intruder! She's got my daughter!" Vanessa's scream sliced through the quiet penthouse, instantly summoning two massive security guards who appeared as if from nowhere. Before Amelia could even drop the laundry cart, the guard seized her, hauling her arms painfully behind her back. Amelia struggled fiercely, her eyes locked on Sharon. "Sharon, run! Find your daddy!" Amelia pleaded, twisting against the iron grip. Vanessa, her composure momentarily shattered by a mixture of shock and fury, rushed the cart. She grabbed Sharon by the arm, dragging her roughly out of the blankets. "You little liar! You will stay dead!" she hissed, trying to pull the terrified child away. Sharon didn't scream for Amelia. She shrieked at Vanessa, a high-pitched cry of raw terror that echoed off the high ceilings. She fought back, kicking and scrambling, clinging desperately to Amelia's leg, refusing to let the stepmother take her. The noise of the commotion finally drew the man everyone was mourning toward the foyer. Harris Evans, looking devastatingly gaunt and aged beyond his years, emerged from the grand living room, drawn by the sound of the scuffle. His eyes were vacant, fixed on the floor, the picture of a man consumed by grief. He barely registered the presence of the intruder, only the escalating noise. "What is the meaning of this racket?" Harris mumbled, his voice hoarse and lifeless. He looked up, finally lifting his gaze to the scene. He saw a frazzled waitress being restrained, his distraught wife grappling with a strange, struggling child, and his entire world seemed to tilt on its axis. He looked confused, unable to reconcile the scene before him with the crushing emptiness he had carried for weeks. For a long moment, Amelia, Harris, and Sharon were locked in a terrifying tableau. Then time seemed to slow. Sharon stopped struggling with Vanessa, her eyes wide and blue, fixed on the heartbroken face of her father. She recognized the scent of his cologne, the sorrow in his posture. With a superhuman surge, Sharon ripped her arm from Vanessa's grasp. She didn't say a word, but she raised the small, worn teddy bear clutched in her hand, Mr. Paws, and held it out toward him. Harris's breath hitched, a ragged sound in his throat. That bear, that specific, one-of-a-kind bear he had personally designed for her last birthday. He'd been told the bear was lost at sea with her. His eyes moved slowly from the bear, up the small, familiar body in the too big sweater, to the face that was supposed to be gone forever. "Sharon," Harris whispered, the name a fragile thread of hope. Sharon's face broke into a desperate, tearful smile. She ran past Vanessa, darting straight into the protective shadow of her father's legs, wrapping her small arms around him as tightly as she could. The instant realization of the lie, the betrayal, and the miracle hit Harris with the force of a physical blow. He crumpled, sinking to his knees on the marble floor and pulling his daughter into a crushing embrace. Great, wrenching sobs tore from him. The grief of the last 2 weeks suddenly compounded and then swept away by the overwhelming joy and shock of her presence. But Vanessa was not defeated. She straightened her gown, adjusting her mask of sophistication with venomous speed. "Don't be fooled, Harris," she spat, her voice ringing with feigned distress. She's a fraud. This woman, this waitress, snatched her from the hospital months ago for ransom. She cut the child's hair and dressed her in rags. I called the police minutes ago after I saw them break in." As if on cue, a sudden rush of uniforms flooded the penthouse. The police had arrived, summoned by Vanessa. Harris stood up, his face a mask of conflict. He had his daughter back, but now he was faced with a chilling choice: the word of the loving woman who had risked everything, or the desperate accusation of the woman who shared his home and knew all his financial secrets. The police immediately moved to the nearest suspect. 2 uniformed officers gripped Amelia's restrained arms, pulling her away from the tearful reunion. "Daddy, no. She saved me. Don't let them take Amelia," Sharon wailed, reaching out for the waitress. Amelia looked back at Harris, her eyes pleading for understanding. "She's telling the truth, Mr. Evans. Vanessa tried to kill her." Harris was paralyzed, clutching Sharon in one arm, his other hand running through his hair in absolute turmoil. He was caught between his overwhelming emotion and the cold, legal reality of a kidnapping accusation. He couldn't move. The officers dragged Amelia toward the elevator, ignoring Sharon's hysterical cries. Harris watched, his face twisted in confusion and doubt, unable to stop them from taking the only person who knew the full truth of his wife's betrayal. Amelia's world dissolved into the cold, hard reality of the police cruiser's back seat. The officer was slamming the door shut, locking her into a dark metal cage. Sharon's hysterical cries faded into the sound of the siren beginning its mournful wail. Amelia felt a crushing despair. She had sacrificed everything, only to be arrested for the very crime she had prevented. Then a sudden, powerful shout ripped through the noise. "Stop! Stop the car!" Harris Evans burst out of tower entrance, his eyes no longer confused, but burning with a fierce, absolute certainty. He ran down the steps, pulling Sharon with him, the little girl still sobbing and pointing at the police car. Harris pounded on the driver's window. "She didn't kidnap her. My daughter just told me everything. Open the door." The officers, recognizing the city's most powerful man, hesitated. Harris ignored them and rushed to the patrol car window where Amelia sat. "Sharon told me about the box," Harris said, his voice ragged but clear, addressing Amelia. "She told me Vanessa put her there." He pulled Sharon closer, the child clutching Mr. Paws, the teddy bear. Harris took the bear gently and located a tiny, nearly invisible seam he had personally sewn into the plush toy. It was a secret feature, a prototype voice recorder he had installed to record Sharon's early childhood vocabulary for a new AI project. He pressed a minuscule button. A chilling, muffled recording played back, echoing faintly in the cool air. "Stay here and don't make a peep. If you make a sound, the monsters will come. You are dead to your father, you brat. Just stay in the box." It was Vanessa's voice, unmistakable and dripping with calculated malice. The officers exchanged stunned, horrified glances. Harris looked at Amelia, his eyes filled with agonizing apology and overwhelming gratitude. "You are free to go, ma'am," the commanding officer said immediately, his tone shifting to respectful haste. "We have a new suspect in the penthouse." Amelia was released, the cold handcuffs replaced by the warmth of Harris's hand as he helped her out of the car. The police squad car, siren now silenced, sped back toward Olympus Tower to make a very different arrest. The chaos subsided, replaced by a quiet, unbelievable calm. 6 months later, the air in the garden of Harris Evans's new suburban estate smelled of fresh-cut grass and blossoming jasmine. It was a warm, bright day. Amelia sat on a wrought iron bench, sipping iced tea, a smile finally resting easily on her lips. She was wearing a beautiful emerald green dress, comfortable and tailored, something she never could have afforded in her old life. Her past as a struggling waitress was a distant, painful memory. Harris had not simply thanked her. He had repaid his debt in a way that changed her life completely. Vanessa had been arrested, the evidence from the bear, coupled with financial fraud uncovered by Harris's legal team, ensuring she would face years in prison. Sharon was home, healed and thriving. The peace Amelia now enjoyed was profound, a low ebb after the high drama of their escape. Harris had set up a fully funded educational trust for her, guaranteeing she could finally pursue her degree in social work. She was now officially the executive administrator of the Harris Evans Foundation, dedicated to supporting abandoned children. A sound broke her reflection, the happy squeal of Sharon running through the grass, followed by Harris. Harris sat down next to Amelia, looking happier and lighter than she had ever seen him, the grief replaced by a protective joy. "You look beautiful, Amelia." he said simply. She smiled. The foundation is running smoothly. We just got 5 more kids into foster homes this month. You built that, Amelia, he reminded her. Your empathy, your kindness. It saved my life and Sharon's. Harris reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Amelia's heart hammered. She thought it was a thank you gift, perhaps a piece of jewelry. When I met you, I saw myself, Harris confessed, his eyes earnest. I grew up in the projects, scraping quarters together, just like you were. I lost my first wife to illness and became so blinded by my own grief and wealth that I couldn't see the danger right in front of me. He opened the box. It wasn't a diamond, but a simple, antique silver ring with an engraved message. You are the most resilient, loving person I have ever known, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. I don't want you to just be Sharon's guardian or my colleague, Amelia. I fell in love with the woman who risked everything for my daughter. He looked her straight in the eye, the wealth and power stripped away, leaving only the honest, grateful man beneath. Will you be my family, Amelia? Will you marry me? Amelia didn't need a moment to think. She knew the answer the second she saw the sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't offering her a rescue. He was offering her a true partnership, a family built not on money or betrayal, but on courage and empathy. She reached out and took his hand. Yes, Harris, she whispered, her own tears blurring her vision for the first time in months. Yes. Sharon, sensing the monumental shift in the air, ran up to them and wedged herself between them, holding their hands tightly. Together, the 3 of them stood up from the bench, a new, unconventional family. The billionaire, the waitress, and the little girl in the box, walking toward the house, finally and utterly home.